Welcome to the Driller Newscast. I'm your host, Brock Yordy, and yes, this is episode 159. See, I promised you we'd be back in a week, and here we are. We got a lot to talk about on this show, and it's about the future of the drilling industry. We talk about this a lot, right, drillers? Well, here's the deal. The future is here, and it's backed by billions of dollars. That's right. I'm going to talk some more about geothermal, your opportunities to harness thermal energy resources, and why, if you didn't last week, you need to get signed up for the NY-GEO organization Brooklyn Conference, March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. You do not want to miss out on these great conversations of drillers, engineers, regulators, developers, policymakers, and the money, the financiers coming together to talk about the heavy lift of what we have to be able to get to wide-scale acceptance. Because here's the deal. We're looking at a massive structural shift in which legacy water well drilling companies is in a collision course with this booming geothermal, geo-exchange, thermal energy sector. That's why we're going to New York. New York is the tip of the spear for building electrification and thermal energy resource harnessing. They have aggressive all-electric building mandates now in play that started December 2025. These developers are being guided to immediately move away from fossil fuels and towards heat pumps and ground source geothermal systems. We're moving away from those big luxury single family homes or the single building to utility scale thermal energy networks, and we need drillers to do it. That's exactly why this week we're going to have a discussion with Kevin Moravec so that we can get into how Moravec well drilling went from well drilling to geothermal drilling. And the fact is that his father, late 2000s, you can watch an NBC nightly news episode of him drilling geothermal boreholes on the Finger Lakes and pumping not a standard grout, but a thermally enhanced grout with graphite that was in a single bag mix, where he trusted a young mud engineer, me, and a experienced mud engineer, Mike West, to support him. He had a mud puppy on site. He was doing it right. So how are we going to do this? We need the workforce. Because the fact is, all the mechanics and foundations for us drilling water wells puts us in a beautiful spot to be able to do ground source heat pump loops. We have the iron, we have the knowledge, but here's the deal. Our outdated state policies are treating shallow geothermal loops like deep oil and gas wells. And we're seeing silly posts out there that, do you understand the viscosity of your drilling fluids in your hydrostatic head? Or do you understand that you're trying to tap a reset? No. Here's the deal. Groundwater professionals, geothermal professionals, we're in this together. And we need to, as contractors, as drillers, as professionals, have a single voice. We need to welcome the right technology and advocacy from that oil and gas sector, but we cannot let this be the bottleneck. The bottleneck that we need to talk about is workforce. And that is not the oil and gas workforce being our savior. There's a $150,000 pipeline here for young individuals to turn their career from what they're doing today into competent drillers. Kevin will speak about this because right now we have the silver tsunami, which is hitting us hard. 3 out of 4 drillers are beyond the age of 58 years old. And as we think about this, we have an opportunity, as more than 50% of the drilling industry says they need drillers to replace retiring drillers. This isn't a crisis. This is our greatest opportunity to pitch the next generation. They can dual enroll in college, science, business, and become the next generation of drilling professionals and not have that wild college debt. Come get dirty with us. That's what our motto should be. Put in the time, and as an apprentice, learn the trade. And within 5 or 6 years, you can be running your own business. It's a great place to be. This is a $1 trillion business, as we heard from PDAC, that there is a focus of $5 trillion to be invested by 2035 to have the minerals to support decarbonization. So here it is. We need to drill in and bridge this gap and align the industries of geothermal and water well and geotechnical and environmental and construction. That's why this week I am sitting down with Kevin Moravec. Kevin is a veteran of our industry and a founding member of the NY-GEO organization and past president of the Empire State Water Well Drilling Association. Here's our conversation from the 2025 Saratoga Springs NY-GEO conference. We get into the full discussion about how do you find time as a business owner that's insanely busy to be at these conferences, to get involved, to have our voice heard, to help with regulatory. He has advocated and helped the state of New York break the 500-foot rule. So now that we can drill 850s for geothermal and beyond, there's so much here. I can't wait to jump into this conversation. Let's take it to Kevin Moravec. Kevin, how long have you been with NY-GEO?
Since its foundation. I'm a founding member of NY-GEO.
And
don't ask me how many years that is, though, because I don't remember. Been a board member for 5 years.
Okay. And the whole goal was driller representation to the geothermal industry when you came into here, right?
It's evolved to that, yes. So initially with NY-GEO, it was about promoting the growth of the industry, helping educate the policymakers, the legislators, the contractors, and in some cases even the manufacturers. The last 7 to 8 years, the focus that I've dwelt on is increasing the participation of drillers so that we are the voice, we're not being dictated to.
And that's important. And that was today's moderated panel. Mm-hmm. And Dave Rosick was on there, who's president of the Empire State Water Well Drilling Association.
Past president.
Past president.
Yep.
There's an incoming. Who's the incoming?
The new one is Chris Root, Root Well Drilling in Dansville.
Excellent. And, you know, that's one thing I'd love to ask you is, like, you have a business. You have a thriving business that's busy, and you're doing this as well. You're volunteering. You're moderating. Dave's here. Equipment's here. How do you find the time, and what did you do to put leadership in place so that you can step away and be able to do things like this?
Anybody that's been involved in the drilling industry knows that there's a couple key pieces to it. Scheduling, quality people running your equipment, quality people running your office, and then there's sales. Sales has a big piece of making sure that everything works, but I can't sell today what we're going to do today. Everything that we do is in the past. We're a family business when it comes to drilling, so we have many chiefs, few Indians, and which always has its good and bad parts. In my HVAC side, again, nothing that I need to do today is crucial to what is being executed today. We're always available by phone, we're available by email, text message, but for the most part, everybody knows what they're supposed to do and how they're going to do it.
If we think about time, reactionary time to seeing a policy get pushed through or something that then you have to insert or garner more people involved probably eats up more away from a business than being part of the front end and helping facilitate.
So reactionary to anything that comes to you in a moment, you've already missed your opportunity to plan around it. And so that is always more expensive in terms of time. So the more that you can engage in the discussions leading up to legislative action, policy action, utility decisions, you can't blame somebody else if you're not willing to step up and be part of the conversation. And that time is invaluable.
How do you, in policy right now, with water wells and geothermal, do you see a cooperation happening, or do you see, there's been times where I've been part of other states where a policy piece gets implemented and the water well drilling industry is going, whoa, we had that setback rule for a reason. Like, are you seeing those types of things happening in New York? There's so much going on in New York.
So most things like setbacks and items like that, that's DEC, that's municipality, that's long established pieces. 6 or 7 years ago was when we started getting more involved with trying to bring the two industries is probably too broad of a term where the technologies are identical. We wanted to be able to incorporate the Empire State Water Well Drillers Association with the New York Geothermal Organization, because water is too important. It is the greatest asset on this planet. Once it's gone, we're done. And so we can have conversations that put both industries in the correct path moving forward. We involve the DEC, or the DEC involves us. And again, the conversation, the communication now, we're 2+ years into this legislative rulemaking process. We think we see the light at the end of the tunnel. And some people over here are going to be upset. Some people over here are going to be upset. At the end of the day, that piece of it will be correct for the industry.
And we, from a policy standpoint, from even the water well industry to geothermal with the ebbs and flows we've had, like, our water policies are quite old. You know, if you think about it, it was when our fathers were young men or our grandfathers that were involved in the last side of this, and there was no internet, smartphones, Facebook, texting. You know, those people were grabbing the rotary phone. And
there was also no interaction. So old generations of drillers, and this is not a New York thing, this is a national thing. Every driller thinks that their methodology is the best. And so to collaborate and communicate with a competitor, people feel as though they're giving away trade secrets. At the end of the day, you know, the last 10 years or 7 years of doing this, we have more communication between drillers. And let's be honest, geothermal as an industry, it's $1 trillion business within the next 20 years. Water well industry business is not even close to that. And so, but we can help direct the policy to protect the important resources so that that investment not only benefits the energy policy of every state in this country, it also helps benefit the drilling community at large, the family businesses that grew this industry.
I love that. So last question, advice. We keep talking about we need more of a new generation. We need more individuals coming in. What's your pitch to the industry? Why come join the drilling industry?
Trades are making a comeback.
Yeah.
So when I grew up, probably when you grew up, our fathers, they grew up with the blood, the sweat, and the tears, the struggle. And they said, I don't necessarily want my kid to go on the same path I did. They send you to college and go get this education. Education is invaluable. We all know this. But when it comes to the trades, that has been set to the side over the last 20, 25 years, and now it's making a comeback. So the pitch to people when we talk to them is, if you have any mechanical inclination, you have any interest about any part of what this is, you have a skyrocketed path to personal wealth unlike anything else that you can do. We tell people, you come in, we'll hire you, $30, $40, $50,000 a year. That's your apprenticeship. You learn everything that we do. By the time you're able to run a rig and handle all these situations, drill a water well, set a screen, run some mud, put a geothermal hole in the ground, install a pump, you're going to make $150,000 a year. You do that for 5 or 6 more years, now you're going to invest in the next rig that we buy that's yours, and now you have a piece of it. So it's bringing the trades back and really showing the youth that, yeah, you might be dirty, but man, you feel good at the end of the day after doing what you did.
There's nothing more rewarding or spiritual about making or helping water come out of the ground. And I feel the same way every time I see a geothermal system go out. It's like we're helping Mother Earth, and civilization doesn't progress without us.
Fine balance, right? We need the water to keep everything going. If we want to reduce the amount of emissions that's coming, we got to use Mother Earth in a different fashion, but they have to work well together.
And that's the last piece there. If you look at the liftoff report, for the liftoff report, it's 80 million buildings for the country. If you look at what New York State's goals are for 2050, it's almost 50% of what the rest of the country is supposed to do is happening in New York. So like if states start participating, a skilled driller, Garen Eubank said it best today. He goes, hey, we're not going to be importing any boreholes anytime soon.
Nope.
So Acme doesn't have a hole that you can just drop on the ground and it's in there.
Nope. And that hole doesn't look the same twice.
Right. I appreciate your time. Thanks,
Appreciate
man.
it, Brock. Thanks.
Huge thank you to Kevin Moravec for his time and insight. He hit the nail on the head. Mother Nature doesn't care about regulations or state lines. If we're going to meet these massive decarbonization goals, the water well drillers and the geothermal drillers are going to have to be on the exact same page. This isn't just a phase, everybody. This is the movement that you've been challenged to accept, that you have been asked to step up and help. We are the groundwater professionals that will protect the environment and the subsurface, regardless if we're drilling for geothermal or water. However, if this isn't enough for you to consider why diversifying a water well business into geothermal, and there's so many resources out there, from the Geothermal Drillers Association to the NY-GEO organization to many groundwater associations to IGSPA and NGWA, all sorts of professionals talking about this right now. I want you to consider this. When politicians and city planners talk about saving water, they almost always, as we've talked on the newscast, pointed to agricultural or municipal or golf courses. These are the watering restrictions they look at. But today, I want you to consider one of the biggest consumptions, and as we've talked about, data centers. But I want you to think about the consumption of heating and cooling and energy has on our groundwater and our water resources. So let's talk about commercial cooling towers. Look at any hospital, university, campus, high-rise, or airport, and you will see massive cooling towers sitting on the roof or out behind parking garages. These are to cool massive buildings. These systems rely on evaporative cooling. Warm condensers spray water down massive fans to pull air across it, and the heat escapes, and we see that evaporate goes out beyond our watershed, or it is put into the sewers and runs out into our oceans. I want you to think about the math right now, and this is something hydrogeologists, environmental water conservation experts, we talk lots about Dr. Reed Maxwell at Princeton, Arizona State, our blazers of the industry, Western Michigan University, as they look at our depletion of groundwater and resources. On a hot summer day, the cooling tower on an average public high school will evaporate roughly 30,000 gallons of water. Now, let's think about a major airport. They can easily burn through 1 million gallons a day just to keep the terminals cool. Go to one of my very first newscast interviews. It was with Jay Egg of NY-GEO. Jay bounces between Florida and the Western United States and Arizona. He gets it. He talks very much about water conservation and evaporative cooling and how we have to get away from this. Nationwide, commercial cooling towers consume an estimated 15 billion gallons of fresh water every single day. I want you to think about 1 acre foot. It's 326,000 gallons. And as we talk about the Colorado River not having enough allotment to meet their 15 million acre feet for the basin states. And now, look in the news right now, Pflugerville, which is just north of Austin. It's where Republic Drill Co. is, Colt McCarthy and team. They're looking at water rationing and some pretty impactful situations to their reservoir. Why? Because that reservoir relies on water from the Colorado River. And as we've gone to 15 million acre feet, Texas and New Mexico have lost their allotments. Not to mention the country of Mexico has lost their 1.5 million acre feet. So that water that I'm talking about, that 15 billion gallons a day, that's pulled directly right out of our stressed reservoirs and aquifers. It's right out of our watershed. So if you can't get behind the idea of equitable heating and cooling, What about water conservation and what happens when we start losing drilling permits? This is why groundwater drillers and geothermal drillers are connected. Let's go simple. Geo-exchange systems, we set loops and they're closed loops. Yes, there's multiple different systems out there, from standing column to pump and dump to dynamic closed loops. But one of the most firm and reliable systems we have is our closed loop system. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And this helps buildings on massive utility scale, reduce this impact. In New York, they're building massive permanent underground heat sinks instead of using cooling towers, thermal energy networks. This is exactly what we need to think about, how we harness that constant temperature, firm temperature of 48 to 65 degrees across the US. And how do we do that? We do it through drilling. That's right. This is what we need you for. So the next time the discussion on geothermal comes up and you go, whoa, I think I should have this in my shop, or man, this seems like a great thing. Don't just think about the energy efficiency or the peak load or all the great pieces of equitable heating and cooling. I want you to think about the livelihood of water and where we're going. That's it for this week. Thank you again, Kevin Moravec. Check out thedriller.com. We have plenty of stories coming out on policymaking, on drilling, on water, on geothermal construction and energy. Check out the great discussions I had with the Fleming College students and Jim Smith. There's so much great content to have. I'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.